The report's purpose was really to inform policymakers, but mostly practitioners, about the wide range of choices that our districts are making with regard to Common Core implementation, and to surface some implementation barriers and early lessons. We really wanted to focus on both the technical strategies districts were using, as well as some of the change management and rollout strategies. And this report was developed to inform a strategy guidebook that we also developed with PACE. We'll learn about later. Our methodology was to profile 11 early adopters. The one local one here, Corona and Norco Unified, is one of the profiles. This is the devil's in the details here, so I encourage you to look at the report and look in depthly at these 11 profiles, because there's a lot of great information in there. Our major finding was that of the early implementers, most were really focusing on one or two core strategies on the technical side. So they weren't trying to break off everything at once. They really were going deep in one or two main things. So when it came to these main things are the 5 listed here. When it came to instruction, they were really focusing on how to shift to some of the more student-centered instructional strategies that were implied by the Common Core. When it came to curriculum, like the CCSS survey that we just heard about, we found that most districts were not purchasing a significant amount of instructional materials early on in the implementation, and that instead they were enrolling teachers to design the curriculum, and they're providing a lot of support to do that. And Corona Norco is a great example of a district. They had enrolled 150 teachers across the district to do a lot of this curriculum design work. Many were focusing on assessments, particularly those with strong PLC systems that were driving the implementation through their PLCs, but also many that were focusing on writing were really focusing on assessment. And then project-based learning, I think for a lot of districts that had focused on explicit direct instruction over the past 10 years, adding a different type of a component to get at the student-centered instruction was important, and many of them were focusing on project-based learning and personalized learning. A few of the districts that we looked at were really using the transition to Common Core as a chance to really focus on blended learning or more personalized learning for their students. The second major finding was that when you ask districts, what's your core strategy? What's your main focus for Common Core implementation? They talked about the technical, but they really talked about how they were going to get it out there. How are they going to ensure that the technical changes that we just talked about reach every classroom, every school, and every student? And so there was a number of common rollout strategies. I'm sure many of us are familiar with these, but they really were careful in how they were implementing these. So they were building roles and structures like teacher leaders. Many had adopted a train-the-trainer model where they were really intensively focusing on a handful of teachers at each site and setting expectations about them to train their peers in their PLCs or grade level and subject area teams. A number of districts had really increased the amount of instructional coaching they were doing to really hardwire the professional learning that teachers were getting in their PD. And many were focusing on observational protocols like instructional rounds or some other walkthrough tool to get into classrooms and to share practices across classrooms. And then lots have really shifted the focus of their work with principals from management to really professional learning, because they recognized the amount of instructional leadership that was going to be required from the Common Core. The third main finding that we found was that across these districts, there was 8 common change management strategies that districts were using. The first was that they were connecting the Common Core to their own local vision for improving teaching and learning. This is really, I thought, a really compelling finding, was that they were looking at what they were doing and good at already, identifying some gaps that they were focusing on, and really connecting to the Common Core to what their district was about. So their key message to their communities was not that Common Core is a great thing, which it is, and that is a key message, but hey, we have this vision for teaching and learning, and Common Core we can leverage the Common Core to get to our vision for teaching and learning, and I think that was the key finding. Another one that I alluded to earlier was that they're carefully managing the pace of change, that they wanted to have a certain amount of momentum and to reinforce that this was a second order change for their teachers, but they did not want to just hook them up to the fire hose and blow their heads off with it. So they really wanted to just go slow to go fast, and that meant not doing curriculum, instruction, assessment, everything all at once, but picking a very tight focus for the beginning of their implementation and waiting for them to build some confidence in the Common Core before they started stretching them more. Almost every single one of the 11 districts that we profiled indicated they were significantly increasing the amount of site level and classroom autonomy over curriculum and instruction. But they were learning that they had to balance this increase in autonomy with a lot more support, with standards, with tools, with templates to be able to do that well. Another major one was that they were enrolling teachers in the design process. I talked about Corona Norco earlier, but this was really compelling because they were handing the tactics off to staff, closer to students and families. And they were learning that this was creating buy-in for Common Core and for the shifts, instructional shifts required in Common Core. But most importantly, it was giving them a chance to really live the Common Core and creating a set of local experts that could go back to their sites that have been designing curriculum and really knew the Common Core inside and out, that could share information and be a resource on their campuses with their other peers. Many of them were building and or repurposing feedback loops. So superintendents and assistant superintendents that we listen to, we're talking about, I haven't been out to my sites this much in a long time, and I've been going out and listening, just talking to teachers, talking to my principals to see how our strategies and tactics are going, and then they were refining their strategies and tactics based on feedback that they were hearing. Many talked about, if we're going to get to this new Common Core transition, we're going to have to really invest in our principals and other teacher leaders at the site. And they have invested significant resources, and they're carefully sequencing and designing their training for principals with their teachers so that principals can really be instructional leaders, know what their teachers are working on, and be able to see it in the classroom. They're also setting clear and feasible expectations for implementation so that everyone in the system knows what they're able to focus on. In one district, this meant simply, we're moving to the Common Core. We're going to ask you to add 2 questions to your formative assessments for math that model the SBAC and the types of performance-based assessments that are going to be on there. That's it. That's a clear expectation for what we wanted you to do. Others have created school goals for each of their schools related to Common Core and set expectations about what activities are going to be at each site. And of course, most of the districts are really taking a comprehensive approach to how they're engaging parents and community in the process. I think the most compelling amount is that they're doing a lot of broad engagement, website, town hall, meetings, newsletters, etc. But they're really realizing that the best way to get the message out about Common Core is to arm their teachers with messages and deliver those messages in parent-teacher conferences. What we did also learn was that the communication had mostly been informational. This district's providing information to parents and community, and less so of a conversation about what the needs are of the community, but this was beginning to change with the LCAP and LCFF. Key finding number 4, there was a number of implementation barriers, lack of time. One that came up repeatedly, especially around the curriculum design, was that teachers who entered the field during No Child Left Behind might lack a lot of the curriculum design skills and experience that are going to be required for districts who are taking a more teacher-driven curriculum design approach. And by and large, people were finding that the instructional materials that were available were not high quality or aligned to Common Core yet, and they were kind of taking a wait-and-see approach. All this went and fed into a strategy guidebook that we developed that offers a structured and research-based model for making some of the design decisions that come up with Common Core, and I encourage you to look at that. And both reports are available on PACE's website, and the links are there.